Welcome to the Rock Fight, where we speak our truth, slay sacred cows, and sometimes agree to disagree. This is an outdoor podcast that aims for the head. I'm Colin True, and today, Brendan Leonard is hopping on the Rock Fight for a conversation with Justin Hausman and myself. Why are we having Brendan on the show? Well, because it's Brendan Leonard. But before we get to that, a few housekeeping items. Please follow and rate The Rock Fight wherever you're listening on any podcast app and leave us that 5-star rating. And if you're an Apple Podcast listener, please leave us a written review in addition to that 5-star rating. If you are one of the ones who sent in your review to myrockfight@gmail.com, the stickers are starting to ship. You'll get yours soon. Thank you for doing so. If you haven't done it yet, send us your email, myrockfight@gmail.com, with your written review. Also, don't forget, Gear and Beer now has its own podcast feed. Go follow and rate Gear and Beer wherever you're listening to The Rock Fight. And all right, let's start the show.
Welcome to the Rock Fight, Rock Fight, Rock Fight.
Brendan Leonard was the fourth ever guest on The Rock Fight, and probably a name you are familiar with if you are listening to this show. Brendan is one of our community's most important voices. There is no doubt that you've either laughed or shared one of the illustrations or charts that Brendan has created to poke fun at our community with one of your friends, or perhaps read one of his many outdoor-themed books. Now, we don't typically have guests on the show without a specific subject or a topic to tackle, but when the opportunity came up to have Brendan back on The Rock Fight, we threw that rule right out the window and happily booked him for the conversation you're about to hear. During our chat, Brendan talks about the state of outdoor media, how kids actually impact outdoor adventure, and of course, he tells Justin and I all about his new book, Ultra Something, which you can buy by heading over to semi-rad.com. Welcome back to The Rock Fight, where today, we're just hanging out with Brendan Leonard. All right, well, one of the founding tenets of The Rock Fight is no guests for the sake of just having a guest.
We have a tenet that's no guests?
Well, it was before you were around. I came up with this. This was one of my founding tenets.
You didn't even get through a sentence before you got interrupted. Wow.
We like anyone who joins us to provide some insight on a particular more topic and subject-driven show, right? But today we're breaking that rule because, as you heard, Brendan Leonard is here. His work at Semi-Rad is ubiquitous in our community, and his new book, Ultra Something, is available for you to buy. As I just minimize my windows, there we go. And he's also now a repeat guest here on The Rock Fight. Second appearance here, Brendan. Thanks for coming on the show.
Oh, yeah. Thanks for having me. I don't even remember the first time. When was that? I'm just joking. It was fun.
Was it the first time?
I believe your question more than your ending statement.
Episode 1. No, I don't know.
It kind of was.
The event, like, what does adventure mean to you?
Well, yeah, because I recorded an interview with you, Patty, Fitz, and Steve Casimiro for the Polar Tech podcast, and then they canceled that pod, and I'm sitting there like with this new podcast. I'm like, well, I have 4 people that interviews with 4 people that people really know. So I had to it was total lesson in editing because I had to figure out a way. We had an hour and a half long conversation about something that I had to kind of figure out an episode through it. So technically, you've been on the pod before.
I listened to that one. I don't remember what you said, but I did listen to that. I listened to the first handful when Colin started trying to get me on the show, and so I liked it. It was
so you're here because of Brendan. That's basically what you're saying.
Not specifically. But although maybe, you know what? The world's a strange place. You know, who could say, really? After watching Dark Matter and Outer Range, the 2 weird sci-fi shows about time jumping and multiple universes the last few months, you know, who knows what causes what to happen, guys?
Who's to say if any of us are really here?
Well, I wasn't sure Colin was until we went camping together for the first time. I actually built this elaborate fantasy up in my head.
You touched his face.
We hugged, and that was part of it. You know, I thought maybe he was some fancy AI software that just so you could have a podcast.
We were just pranking you the whole time. All right, this idiot, we'll get him on. He'll believe it.
I was a little disappointed that he was real because I loved the idea of developing a pretty deep friendship with an AI, and then I'd have to wrestle with whether or not I cared that he was real or not. That was a fun moment.
Sort of like Blade Runner, basically.
Exactly. Yeah. Although I don't know, had he showed up and he was just a computer, I don't know how that would have worked. Just a floating.
It would have been like Max
laptop.
Headroom. So wheeled out a TV.
Wow, we are really showing our age here.
Wow, Max, I've never thought about it that way. Is his name a play on Max Headroom, having more headroom in an airplane?
I never thought of that either, but absolutely, right?
Huh. Interesting. Well, Brendan, one of the things that we wanted to talk about, we occasionally dive into the world of outdoor media and kind of what works and what doesn't, and
Oh,
Most
tell
of it
me.
well, most of it, yeah, right. Well, shit. That's
It mostly doesn't.
well, yeah, we can get to that later. But you're obviously an interesting figure in this world. I live in a tiny. I'm getting to a point. I live in a very small town. There's like 7,000 people in this town.
Is that in Marin? Is it in Marin?
Shut up, Colin. Okay, I just sometimes there's new listeners. I'm not bragging. Believe me. You should see how much like food costs here. Anyway, like a little town, like 7,000 people, and we have a variety store, like an old-fashioned, independently owned variety store where you can buy like a slide whistle and like napkins, flags, candy. It's amazing. But the woman does these really elaborate like window displays, and the summertime window display is camping. And sure enough, your book is there. Like there's always a book or two from you there.
Really?
Like, yeah, always. And the first time I walked by, I don't remember which one it was. Maybe like one of your like the book didn't you write a book that was something about like how to survive in the woods or something like some play on
Surviving the Great Outdoors is
Thank
what
you.
they retitled it. Yeah.
And like I think there was that one. And I stopped in and said, "Hey, I know this guy." We chatted for a while, but anyway, she's always got books from you out there. How cool is that?
Huh. That's
so
interesting.
Yeah, so you have a little fan here. But anyway, it seems like the way that you've grown semi-rad and your work as a writer, it seems non-traditional, at least in the sense that it seems like you kind of like navigated your way to this point rather than like set out to do it. I could be wrong. But we were wondering if, the outdoor space in your experience has kind of given you kind of the space to chart a non-traditional career path. Or do you think you would have like done this anyway had you worked at like a Best Buy or something? Would you be writing books?
Managing the appliance department at
about
Target.
like refrigerators or something. But I mean, do you think there's something unique about the outdoor world where someone who's opinionated or at least has a unique take on it can chart a career path in just kind of being a voice, really?
Probably. I don't know. I don't like opinionated is like something.
Yeah, I guess that's not really.
I always think that's something really annoying people say. I'm like, no shit, I have a fucking opinion too. I'm just not
That's
loud about it.
mostly because you're a human being,
Yes. Yeah. Wow. Amazing.
Yeah.
Do you breathe air too?
Yeah, right.
Have you heard of water?
No, I think it's like, I wouldn't say it's like a complete accident, but I got a master's degree in journalism a few blocks away from my house here 150 years ago. So I've made a lot of progress. I've now landed back here. But at the time, like one of the most formative classes for me was like basically how to do freelance pitching magazines and write for magazines, which were, you guys are old enough to remember these, but they were like these collections of paper that there were like stories and photos in them, and you would pay a company. Yeah, and they would show up.
You look at it on your phone? Like, what do you do with it?
Yeah, surely.
So you sort of can now. At the time, though, you couldn't look at anything on your phone. You could just look at, I believe there was text messaging then, maybe. I don't know. But anyway, it was like I had to write a story and get it published in order to graduate or in order to pass the class. And it was like, I was like, oh my God, how am I going to get Rolling Stone to publish my thoughts on whatever hip hop?
Like, I have written the definitive article on grunge now.
That's a big assignment. And a friend was like, you should just write something for Idaho Magazine. They take anything. And I was like, cool. And I pitched the editor there a story about just like a little 2-day road trip my buddy and I took. And they said, yeah, sure, we'll take it. It's like $40. And it takes a lot of $40 articles to make a living.
Yeah, that's amazing.
It was just this idea that, I basically looking at my education, it was like, okay, you need to go work for a newspaper and then go sit through city council meetings and like watch the police blotter scanner or whatever and like write stories about whatever is news. And it was kind of like this light bulb where it was like, I would go do this stuff anyway. If I can tell stories about it in some way, maybe I can do this for a living. And it only took like eight years of banging my head against the wall, and I finally got enough income going where I could do it full time. But it's tough. And I think now is so at first I started, working a full-time job and freelancing, trying to freelance on the side, like after work, and that made a little bit of income. Then eventually I was able to do enough freelance work that I could do it full time, which was a lot and really busy. And now I sort of kind of got away from working for other publications because it was so hard to get paid by them. At the time, it was just like,
is that an outdoor thing or is that just a thing? Is it like, do we
I don't
know?
know.
Do you guys know?
I've never written for anything other than the outdoor space, and I've never really been a freelancer other than just here and there.
Yeah.
So, but I've heard really bad things about it. Yeah.
It was just like, okay, I got these ideas that nobody wants to publish. So I made my own website in 2011, just started writing what I thought was funny stuff. And some of it took, some of it didn't, which is how I met our friend, Steven Casimiro, found my stuff and asked if he could start publishing on an adventure journal. So that was the beginning of that relationship. But eventually it went from magazines won't publish my stuff to a few magazines. Editors would say, oh, just write it like you'd write it for your blog. And I thought, oh, really interesting that's where we are now.
Yeah.
But it was still like the whole process of I'm going to pitch you an article. We're going to go back and forth about what the article is going to be and how long it needs to be. And then we'll do the edits back and forth and back and forth and back and forth. And at the end of it, I'll ask you for the money and then you won't pay me for 3 months, 6 months, sometimes a year. Like I had to threaten one magazine. They were like, hey, is your column done for this month? And I was like, I'm not writing a fucking column for you. You guys owe me $5,000 from the last year.
Wow.
Like, and the payment showed up,
yeah.
a week later. I'm like, yeah, okay. But then I had experiences where I'd go back and forth with somebody. There's like a 500-word piece for a magazine. And I think it was a junior editor, very excited about doing their job. And we got to version 10 of this piece. And I was like, look, I cannot put any more time into this. Like, I know you're paying, it's like $500.
Yeah.
So it was like a combination of these experiences where it was just this frustration of like, they have a vision for what their magazine is. And a lot of sometimes it was, we're going to pound every writer's writing into the same flavor of hamburger that we put in every page, which works for them. Whatever, that's fine. But that's not what I want to do. So I ended up trying to engineer a way where I was just writing directly for the people who read it, which is basically Patreon is how I make not most of my money, but like it's a baseline income that allows me to do everything else. So I'm kind of just writing directly for readers now, which is great. It's a smaller audience, obviously, but actually I don't know if it is, to be honest with you. Like,
yeah, good point.
Like, I don't know what the traffic is like on some of the websites that I would have written for, but I don't know that, I got like 15,000 people subscribed to my newsletter and it has a 70% open rate.
Yeah.
And it's one story.
That's really high. Well, it makes sense if they're subscribed to it. Yeah.
There's no bullshit in there. Nobody's, I'm not sending you ads and like marketing crap. It's like literally, here's what I wrote this week. If you want
here's my stuff.
Yeah. So, so it's kind of cool. I think you can kind of get in your own echo chamber that way too, but, I don't know. It's been interesting. I don't think like I've had any sort of vision of just like, I don't want to do that anymore. So I'm going to try to do this instead.
Yeah.
You kind of arrive at whatever.
Because now, like, if you were going to start today, because the thing about, the Patreon thing's interesting, but you still have to build that audience in order for that to work for you, right? So if you were starting over today, I imagine the same professor wouldn't be like, well, go get published in, Idaho Magazine. It would probably be more like, show me your Substack that you started or something like that, right? I mean, isn't that, there seems like there's more opportunities to grow that audience if you want to and put the work in that can reach a broader audience maybe more quickly. But it's still, and it's very different than it was when you started, but maybe could end up ultimately getting you in the same place. I mean, is that fair? How would you kind of go about it today, I guess, if you were going to start over now?
That's funny because I don't even think I'm that in touch with what is the best way to do things anymore. Like if I had to teach a college class.
It's radically changing, right? I mean, there's this huge blowback on like Instagram now because they changed everything for their creators. I mean, it's all like it's constantly in flux.
Yeah, it's kind of awful. I'm like, I don't even like every week. I'm like, maybe I should just quit, But if I was teaching a college class, I don't know what I'd be like. Hey, well, FYI, I'm a dinosaur. You guys are 20. You probably know better ways to do this than I do. But it's just you have to kind of. I guess the idea is just like, where's the audience, and what do you want for your audience? And like, how do you reach them as opposed to, I need to write for publication X and then I will be successful according to.
That's how I thought. That's how I thought.
Which I think is still I think that's still big for a lot of people. They're like, oh, would I like to have a New York Times bestselling book? Sure. Do I want to change the book and like jump through the hoops and share the revenue with an agent and a publishing company that has to pay, 100 people's health insurance? It's just like, or do I just want to make a book? And if like publishers have to they want to sell 50,000 copies of your book, I can sell 5,000 and be extremely happy,
But both of you guys, just so it could be both, it's funny what you both said that about how you have that kind of perception of like, I got to work there and then it's going to work out, right? I think that's almost, I didn't, I came up on the brand side of stuff of the industry, and I carried a similar mindset of like, oh, I just need to get to like a brand like that. And that's where it's going to work out for me. And that's where I'll have the opportunities to achieve.
Because you were like director of sales of North America for
but it was
Polartec,
not
like
it was not as simple as like, when I started at retail to that. It still took 20 years, right? And it kind of like a lot of missteps along the way. But I remember holding that same sort of opinion of like, oh, I just got to get there. And I wonder if that's almost a human nature point of view of like, you know what? That's where I need to go. They kind of build it up in your head, regardless of like maybe what you're seeing around you. That's telling you something different. You know what I mean?
Probably, but I would imagine that now kids and people younger than me would probably just say like, I need to get viral somehow. Like I don't know that you would say I need to write for X magazine. Right. I mean, when I got my job at Surfer magazine, this was all an accident for me. Like it was never something I set out to do. I don't have a master's in journalism or anything like that.
You thought you were applying at 7-Eleven and it was like, oh no, it's Surfer magazine.
Oh shit, this was. I thought it was a subscription card.
Sure. Where's
it was
actually
a job application.
Right?
Shit,
that's fine.
No, kind of like. They reached out to me, and so.
Well, that always happens.
Right. Yeah.
They just see you walking by and we're like, he's handsome.
Look at that guy. I bet that guy can surf and write about it.
Well, that was actually, it's funny because I have had the experience where your college professors want you to come back and be like, oh, well, you're like on the masthead at like a well-known, relatively speaking, like magazine. Like, come tell us how you did it. I'm like, dude, I emailed a guy once and he like said, sure, you can like
I
write
love that.
for me. It's just like, I don't know, like, I don't know what to tell you. There's not like an obstacle course you have to like get through first.
Origin stories with Justin Hausman's like 3 seconds long. I just emailed a guy and it worked out.
But kind of. But like, I don't know what you would do. I don't even know like surely it's not writing for outside. Like I don't know what would be your big break. Like somebody like Kyle Frost or whatever who had their own newsletter who is now it's on Mountain Gazette. Like maybe, but even then, like Mountain Gazette's audience isn't big enough to where you're going to be shooting stratospherically. Based on that. So I don't know what you would do. I don't know I have no idea. Like now it's like I read the New Yorker and I used to recognize all the names. Now like every article it's like a different, I've never seen this person before. Like it just seems like, everyone's trying different avenues. I don't know.
Yeah.
Well, like we talked about at the beginning, we're all dads. Your son's coming up turning 2 this year. Is that right?
Yeah. Like next week actually. So
dang, man. How's that going? You doing all right?
Yeah, it's a lot. I could see having kids at like 33 instead of 43. So I'm a little tired sometimes.
Yeah.
And it's exhausting.
You'd be tired then too. I'm sure.
Yeah, but I think it wouldn't hurt as much. Maybe. I don't know. Who knows? I was a dipshit at 33, so I'm glad we waited. But
are you saying you're not now? Like you're no longer a dipshit?
Yeah, good correction.
You're announcing that here on the podcast.
I was much more of a dipshit.
He was a dipshit with a lot more energy to be more dipshitty. Right. There's a lot more options for dipshittery.
I'm asking for myself. I'm like, I continue to be a dipshit into my old age. So that's why I want to know.
Yeah, maybe that'll be on my tombstone. He was a dipshit.
Actually, I'm going to demand that's on my tombstone.
He's just fantastic. A dead dipshit now.
Imagine the comedy for centuries as people come to see. Like,
I do kind of love that idea. I do love that idea. I'm sure there are funny tombstones out there. But
here lies Colin True. What a dipshit.
What a fucking asshole. You can chisel whatever you want into other people's tombstones. I'm sure that's a huge crime, but like, what's going to happen?
Yeah, it's a loud crime to do too. It's not like easy. To
also, the last time I saw like a cemetery with like tombstones in it. I guess they exist, but that's not.
People
aren't going. You can cremate me, but I still want the dipshit tombstone set up on my behalf. But I don't know, man. Are you getting ready to write the outdoor publication about how you still get after it? Even though you have kids, like it seems like it's a requirement.
No, I feel like I would love to be good at making time for big adventures and stuff, but I don't really care if I'm good at that anymore. I'm like, I just want to be good at being a dad, and like, my kid's going to be 2 for a year, and like if I'm away for a week, that's almost 5% of that. Is that right? Is that math right? No,
We don't know.
That's not
Sure.
Yeah, we have no
Dad
idea,
brains.
dude.
It's fine. Yeah.
It's a chunk of his life. A week goes by and he's a different person. It's like, okay,
Yeah.
and we're only
Well,
having
especially
one,
at that age. Yeah.
yeah,
for
we're
sure.
having one kid, so it's like this is it. And I don't know. Yeah, I struggle more with like, God, am I actually going to stay relevant through this guy's childhood? You know,
Yeah.
People are like,
that's
adventures
normal.
change, and I'm like, yeah, sure, but like, I don't know.
Well, you're doing the Western States this weekend, aren't you?
Oh yeah,
You're running in that, right? Yeah, you look like
from
you're
your treadmill
ready
in
for
his study
Yeah.
right there.
Yeah,
I'm
he's actually talking to us while running the
That's
Western
right.
States.
I'm actually super happy to just go run down the end of our block and up this mountain and come back. Like do that like 2-3 times a week. I'm psyched, you know. And I feel like, God, I should try to do other things and like find material for stories. But it's like literally that's my treadmill. I run 2 miles. I go up 2,000 feet to the forest. I come back down and I'm good. But yeah, it's not great for material as far as you thank God I'm not trying to pitch stories to magazines, you know, about like things I do.
How did you get into? I'm curious, Brendan. Like, how did you get into big time running? Like, is that because you? The reason I ask is because like the idea of just going out and running is so easy compared to like anything else. And now, based on hearing you say that you kind of don't do a lot of other things, I'm wondering if that was it. Was it you were just like, I can't, you know, like all the whatever else you'd like to do seemed too hard or too complicated, but you could always just run. Is that kind of
It's
part of
funny.
it?
It's funny you should ask this in this book that I wrote that just came out.
Huh?
Yeah.
Is it
it's
about
kinda-
running?
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, it's about something.
It's partly about running.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's a lot of stuff in there. I was just curious, you know, I think there's a number of things that led me to be like, oh, let's just give this a try. And
Yeah.
I did and I kind of got hooked on it about the same age as like every single white dude who
It
runs
did seem
ultra
like a
marathons.
thing.
It's
I
like,
did it.
It
Yeah.
seemed
It's
like
yeah.
a thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
and now it's just like it really works for everything. Like I don't need a partner. I can go at any time of the day I want. It burns more calories per minute than any other form of outdoor exercise that I have access to. It's very easy to just go out and do it. I also use the time to, you know, a lot of people listen to podcasts or music when they run, and I just don't because I need the time to think because the rest of my life is just bombarded with media or, you know, inbound communication or a toddler. And it's like, I just go and I just like some days I think up with the next, what I think is a brilliant idea for something. And some days I just don't think about anything. And that's what I use it for more than anything at this point. So if I run like 30 miles a week, I'm really, really very happy with that, which is not much if you're an ultra runner, but I don't know. I still think I'm just like a dude from the Midwest who could have just stayed and been a normal guy. And like, so 30 miles a week in ultra marathons is absolutely huge for me. So
Totally. I forgot you're from the Midwest. Where are you from again?
Iowa.
Iowa.
And neither of you guys have been there. That's fine. I get it.
I've been to Iowa. Yeah, I actually.
No, I don't.
Colin, I want to
14
make sure. I want to make sure you're not thinking of Ohio or Idaho.
I've definitely been to Ohio.
A pure vowel state.
No, we were 14 years ago today. We were moving from Massachusetts. We were in the middle of moving from Massachusetts to Utah, and I saw a photo on my Facebook page today of having lunch in Davenport on our way through. So
yeah,
I have been through Iowa.
I do plan to go to Iowa at some point because, oddly enough, this Australian guy I know who works in the wine business is a fly fisherman, and I like to fly fish, and he will not shut up about how rad the fly fishing is in Iowa.
Really?
And,
Where's
yeah,
he
like these
fish?
I don't know, he said like little streams, like small streams, big fish, and there's not much pressure, and it's really cool. And I didn't believe him and looked into it, and sure enough, yeah, there's a ton of.
He's gonna be
fly
like, "Hey
fishing in
man, there's
Iowa.
this town. It's called Boise. and what it is.
Right?
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah, it could be.
Idaho.
Could
Okay.
be.
I mean, there is fishing there, but like you don't want to get in the rivers generally.
No,
'cause
it's
of
like
all the-
these are little creeks. He showed me pictures, and
Yeah.
very leafy. And I don't know much about Iowa other than Field of Dreams Field, which Colin and I are planning on going to at some
Well,
point.
and I want to do Ragbri. I definitely would like to do that. I want to have
yeah.
that experience at some point. It looks super fun.
Absolutely recommend that 1,000% as the best bicycle event you will ever take part in
That's
your entire life.
Hearty endorsement.
When
It's
is that?
incredible.
Does
July,
it already
usually.
happen this year?
Last full week of July.
Yeah.
Can't make it happen.
Whatever the hottest week is.
Yeah, whatever the worst
well,
possible timing
Iowa
is.
is when it is.
What's the
Yeah.
play as sort of a middle-aged man? Do we just book the hotels, or do you just like you suck it up and you sleep in the humidity? Like, what's the way
Colin,
to
other
do
people do like camping.
it?
You're
You're
assuming that everybody hates camping like you do. But
when
there are
it's like
plenty of us that
90%
enjoy it.
humidity and 90 degrees, I don't think it's ever pleasant to be camping.
If you're from there, or you can find a group, like a group of people. Like my dad has done it, my mom has done it, I've done it. My dad's done it, I think 3 times. I've done it 3 times. My mom did it. She just knew a friend who actually knew this group of state troopers who were doing it, and so they just, out of a group of whatever 8 or 10 people, one of them knew someone fairly close to the route every night, so they just stayed at this person's house, or sleeping on
That's
couches,
amazing.
whatever. So that's what a lot of people do, but the camping is not bad. They set up, they convert. So it's 10,000 people riding in this mass across the state, but it's more like 20,000 because people show up and ride for the day, or people just kind of bandit it unofficially. So it's huge mass of people. So you'll shower at the high school in the locker rooms, or they'll convert like car washes into showers, and like
That's awesome.
That sounds great. That's a good call, actually.
yeah, and it's
High school
like
showering would be bad.
They put you on the
memories
conveyor
there.
belt,
I don't want
do
to.
the car wash.
the infrastructure is kind of incredible. It's sort of like a roaming music festival almost. So like food trucks and vendors will just kind of follow the route, and the route's different every year.
They have
but
tacos?
I'm sure they do now. I haven't done it for 20 years. So
Pie is the big
okay,
thing.
but you can probably eat the same sandwich all 7 days because the vendor will be somewhere
Just
along
keeps
the route
moving
every
with
day. Yeah. Because they're smart. They're like, we're here. We might as well. So
That sounds great. Colin, let's do that next year.
You want to do it
What do you
next year?
say? Let's do it. Yeah.
it's
All right.
amazing. It's probably more fun if you register and officially have a wristband
Yeah.
and stuff like that, but we never did.
Oh, you just jumped in?
you were a
Are you
poacher.
like you were a bandit?
We were dickhead college kids, and we just had our buddy drive a van with all our stuff in it, and he would just meet us at every single town. We'd like be at the post. We'd camp on the grounds of the post office, or he would leave a note where we were going to be camping. And yeah, it was great. He would
God, that sounds like fun.
it's absolutely amazing. It's like this incredible cultural thing that no one's ever really managed to capture
Yeah.
in a film, in a video.
So let's tell us about the book. We haven't read it. For full disclosure, people out there, Colin doesn't ever read, and I haven't read it yet. But yeah,
I bet I read it before you. I'm going to predict right now that I read it before you. I'm going to
zero
read
chance
it
of
like
that.
tomorrow afternoon.
There's no chance of that.
So you guys are probably familiar with like movies. Books.
I've heard of them. Yeah.
So there's like nonfiction movies called documentaries, and then there's narrative movies that are fiction. So books are kind of like that, but you read words, and the story exists more in your head.
Is there a speaker for the sound, like for the score, or is it like?
There's typically not music.
How do the explosions happen? Does the book
Yeah,
get hot?
yeah.
Does the book get hot?
Sometimes with audiobooks.
It says it's in the rain. Like, are you?
Yeah, no. Yeah, it's not immersive like that. It's not 3D.
Colin, you're thinking of the holodeck on the Enterprise.
Yeah.
God, wouldn't you love to have the holodeck?
Yeah.
That would be terrible for me.
So anyway, this is a book that explores human endurance through many, many, many angles. It's sort of about me, like my journey into finding ultra running and doing these long distance things, but it explores all these other things like factory work, psychology, all these psychological studies about like benign masochism.
What is that? I've never heard that.
I'm curious as well.
It's things that your brain and body first perceive as being uncomfortable or bad, but you then learn to like them. Like eating spicy food is like pretty much the most common one that
I've never heard that term. That's a cool term.
Yeah, so it explains. But there's, I wanted to dive into why we shouldn't be surprised people run 100 miles for fun.
So this is
exposes a lot of things.
It's your third running base book, though, right? It's your third one, right? I hate running.
Don't put him on the spot, man.
Well, I've read those two, so that's why I want to let you know. I don't think Justin has. But the what is it about the topic you keep returning to? I mean, obviously it's integrated in your daily life, but like, what is it about it that you're just like?
Do you have
another running book in there somewhere? Or?
It is not what the people want. That's not how I approach things.
Oh.
Also, I'd be more successful if I actually focused on what the people wanted. No, I wanted to
That's
write
porn.
I wanted to
That's actually what the people want.
Yes.
I mean,
Obviously.
guys, we have cameras. We can
make it happen right now.
We can make a whole lot of money right now.
What is
would we make a lot of money?
I don't think you would.
Yeah, I have probably inflated self. I don't know what the word is I'm looking for here. Anyway,
no, it's what I'm doing right now. And there's a couple books I read probably because like 4 years ago, maybe 3 or 4 years ago, that the structure was extremely interesting as far as what you could do with a book. And one was called Arbitrary Stupid Goal. And the other one is, which is,
that sounds like something you would write. That's great.
Well, it's actually about a restaurant in the Village in New York in the 70s.
Great.
It's a fantastic book. I bought 12 copies of it for $3 a piece a few months ago just to give to friends whenever it comes up.
That's great.
But it was I kind of stole the formatting of the book from that and was like, I'm going to do this too, where every chunk of text is no longer than 500 words. And there's a ton of white space in the book, which has made a few people angry or confused.
They paid for those words,
which I'm like, nope, we're doing this.
That's cool.
And just the short bits. There's another book called So Many Olympic Exertions, which is sort of about sports and history and psychology of sports, but it's fictionalized, but I believe it's sort of a memoir. But it was also that same thing where it's just these little bits. I'm like, man, this is such an addicting format because you're like, oh, I can read this much more. So I wanted to try to make a big, weird book about, endurance, which is something I'm interested in. And so that's kind of what happened. And it was like 3 months of sitting at my kitchen table and writing and illustrating, and then also reading tons of books and studies about different things and bringing those stories in and not presenting the dots to people, but not connecting them necessarily. I didn't want to say, well, this is relevant to ultra running because, it's this. It's like, no, this other person did this other thing. And isn't that interesting? Maybe you have space for that in your brain. One of the earliest examples in the book is I think it's like page 9 or 10 is the couple that visited all 645 Cracker Barrel restaurants in America over the span of, I think it took them like 30 years.
How did you find that?
I knew about it, man.
He did it.
Oh shit! That was Hillary. Of course, that's why you wait so long to have kids. Yeah,
it was in the news. Whatever, like 4 or 5 years ago, and I was like, man, what about those people? And I had to include that. And then the wife died a few years ago, but the guy is still living in Indiana, and somehow his brother's son, so with his nephew, someone related to his nephew came to one of my book signings and was like, my husband's brother is related to that guy you mentioned. You read that page out loud, and I was like, oh, that's great. And I ended up sending someone a book that was supposed to be delivered to this guy, and I'm sure he's just as confused as anyone could be. I don't know what the hell's going on here, but my name's on page 9. So
that's fantastic.
Yeah.
This episode is brought to you by Switchback Spring, the new outdoor industry gathering for education, networking, and business, coming to Nashville, June 2025. Connect with peers and players in gear, footwear, apparel, hiking, camping, trail running, and more for 3 days of learning, discovery, and celebration. Switchback Spring is the new go-to meetup for specialty retailers, brands, media, and outdoor organizations. Mark your calendars for June 16, 18, 2025. Visit switchbackevent.com for all the details and start planning your new outdoor industry adventure.
Yeah.
But a big part of Semi-Rad and just a lot of your work is the humor and a lot of like the illustrations illustrations that you do. What were your influences like from a cartooning or just a humor point of view? Like what kind of, obviously it's a lot of your own voice, right? And I'm sure you've been asked this a million times, but like what were like growing up, what were the things that really resonated with you to kind of, you feel like kind of come out when you're doing some of those things?
I was like really into, I was on our school's math team, went to the state competition when I was in 8th grade. Yeah. 8th grade. And it was like 4 of us doing math. I couldn't even tell you what we actually did for the competition. I imagine we just worked things out on paper. So I think there's always been a strong like math and science angle to like,
so the charts
in
and
my brain
whatnot.
somewhere.
Yeah.
Yeah, the charts make sense. Yeah.
Somebody had sent me, this is probably 15 or more years ago, a friend of mine sent me the XKCD drawing. It's called Fuck Grapefruit. And it's an XY chart of how good fruit tastes versus how hard it is to access the actual fruit.
God, I want to meet this person.
Oh, XKCD is like just a what's the word I'm looking for? I mean, Randall Monroe, this guy's just a legend and just like amazing.
Oh, I know that name. Yeah.
Yeah. He has several books, and the website has always been very interesting. He does like sort of really basic comics, but also these charts that are pretty fantastic. And that chart was probably more instrumental in me doing
That's like
anything.
ground zero for you, kind of.
Yeah. Cause it was like, here's information, but it's not necessarily, objective at all. It's like, I don't like grapefruit.
But it's probably, it's still pretty accurate.
But I was just going to say, I bet most people would be like, totally. Yeah.
What happened? The grapefruits, I remember in the 80s were like a huge thing, right? The people would have them, they'd sprinkle sugar on it. Have they been like market corrected by some other piece of fruit? Are they still a thing?
No, you just don't. We eat a shitload of grapefruit.
You're the one. I never see them out. Really?
Like with cottage cheese. Remember you have like a grapefruit with like cottage cheese on it or something? Yeah. No, we eat grapefruit.
I actually don't eat grapefruit, so I'm kind of Randall Monroe. But pineapple,
don't act like it's normal.
Pineapple's like the best tasting thing that's the hardest to get into because it's so spiky and everything.
Worth the effort, yeah.
Huh. I would disagree with that. I would say, is coconut a fruit? Like coconut's got to be the worst.
Yeah, coconut's way out there. Yep.
Yeah, that's true, and so much less inside than probably many other fruits, right?
But so
just like
good.
What you get. Yeah.
You know what we had yesterday, Colin? We had a pineapple coconut beer, didn't we?
We did. It was delicious.
On the Gear and Beer. Yeah.
Just Google "fuck grapefruit," you'll find it, and maybe you agree with it. Maybe
do
not,
I want to? I feel like that's a dangerous.
I feel like
search.
Somebody's gonna be fucking a grapefruit if you Google that. It's probably.
I mean, that's
okay. Okay, Google XKCD "fuck grapefruit." that should be pretty safe.
So this question is now burning a hole in my brain. I have to ask it. What grade level could you win a math contest at today?
Oh no, just
like could you?
I abstain from answering this question.
Like second grade?
Yeah, maybe if I'm lucky.
Third grade?
Are we talking just basic?
I feel like I'd do fine until I think I'd do fine until like 6th grade.
Yeah, wait till your middle schoolers are bringing home like math homework, and it's just like, thank God my wife used to be a teacher and loves math. Otherwise, they'd all be failing math if they were relying on me. It's horrible.
I had to reteach myself trigonometry for the GRE, and that was like. I was only 22.
You had to take
21.
Wait. You had to do a trig part of
the GRE.
I guess,
right?
Yeah, I guess, yeah. There's math in the GRE, but like if you were going to journalism school, why the hell did you care about your math score? They still wanted you to have a high math score.
My GPA was so bad because I was a full blown alcoholic. So my trajectory was take the GRE. Get arrested for the last time, go to rehab, do a week in jail, and then go to grad school. So that was like, that's honestly, where I was at. So I had to get a good GRE score to make up for my 2.79 GPA.
That sounds more like a creative writing workship plan.
Well, I did take a creative writing workshop in college. That really helped. But yeah, so no, I did have to do a little trigonometry 2 years ago when I was remodeling a shed for my wife's office. Cool. It didn't. It was way too much math. It was bullshit.
I guess I was just sort of curious what you think. I mean, you've been involved in outdoor media for a long time. if there's bright spots, if there's things that you think are working, or whatever, like it's changed a lot, right? I mean, since you got into it, even since I've gotten into it, and I don't know, I'm always just curious. Like Colin and I talk quite a bit about how strange it is without like a tentpole site or a tentpole magazine or anything like that, where everybody kind of knows what's going on because they all read it. Now it's just we're all in our own little tubes. But I don't know.
I mean, it's
Just kinda wondering
exciting,
what
but
you
it's
think.
it's weird, right? I mean, for the longest time, there was this like, it was very basic about like what the titles were and what they did and everything. And now, for better or for worse, there is a bit of a what I call the outside sized hole as left as they've migrated, and for better or for worse, to be more of a tech company than a media company, right? I think that's fair to say. They're still doing things, but it's like you see where the priorities are. It's kind of opened up a lot of like blank space, like kind of like where's it all going to go?
I don't know. I don't know what's going on. I don't know what they're doing. I don't know what their strategy is. I just know they send me a check every month, and that's all.
Yeah,
That's all.
that's
I'm
good.
good with that.
Oh,
you?
better than-
Better
than it used to be.
I'm sorry. I don't want to like be.
No, they
I'm not bagging on
literally-
your employer.
They literally take what I write for my newsletter and it appears on their website. Sometimes 2 weeks later, sometimes 4 months later, but I get
That's great.
that's been the arrangement since like
Good deal.
2017, which is great. But like I'm kind of as an outside observer, I'm like, I'm not sure what the whole strategy is here. And like, I don't know that when I think of like what am I interested in the outdoors? I'm like kind of interested in like individual people.
Yeah.
Like Malik Martin, the photographer, is a voice that I'm like, I was just thinking yesterday, I'm like, this guy is literally a bright spot every time I see his stuff, and other people like that. But I'm not going, what company should I follow?
Right.
I think there's some fun stuff being created. There was a Satisfy running video a few weeks ago, maybe it was a couple months ago now. That was very, it's just this song called Red Eyes by the War on Drugs, which also probably shows my age, but it's just a guy running through LA. And it wasn't,
I saw
a
that.
heavy
That was
amount
cool.
of editing. It was just like, this is absolutely amazing. I don't know why. I was like, this looks super lame. I'm like, how could they just be this lazy? And I started watching it. I'm like, this is amazing. But it's more like individual pieces of content. And I feel like companies come in and out of that, like there was a while where like Merrill made like 5 or 6 really good videos in a row, but I feel like they're not doing that anymore. And, so I don't know, everything changes and I don't know. I mean, the number of people who started around the time I did who grew up wanting to write for National Geographic because they got the yellow magazines, in the mail or whatever is like amazing. But that magazine it's not even going to exist anymore.
Right.
You ask kids who are doing outdoor stuff, like, do they read it? Like, what is that?
I mean, I don't even read. I do have a subscription to the digital, but that's just so I can mine it for content. I don't really read it. Yeah.
Right. So I don't know. Yeah, it's, there's this old Mos Def song that I feel like it's just called hip hop, but he's actually just talking over a beat at the beginning of it. And he's like, people always want to ask what's hip hop doing? Like hip hop is some giant that lives in the hillside coming down to visit the village people.
Yeah.
And he goes on to say like, we are hip hop. What we do is hip hop. And I'm like, that's what media is. People are like the media this, the media that. I'm like, look, everybody's got a goddamn phone nowadays. You're the media. Like,
yeah, that's true.
I mean, sure, we're not doing journalism and like fact checking things, but like literally the media is a completely different organism than it was 20 years ago. And we're all in it, as opposed to being like, somebody should do a story on this. And you're like, well, just somebody probably did. It's probably on TikTok,
Yeah,
like,
totally. I guess like, I don't necessarily, I'm sort of on the fence about whether or not I think the current landscape of everybody being a creator or there not being a central place to get your information or whatever that is. Like, I don't know if that's good or bad. It doesn't have to be either. But I also think that there is it's just something I'm always trying to tease out, right? Like what I do think that there is something to be said for sort of vetted things, like someone who knows what they're talking about, actually has the chops and actually has worked with a group of people who can polish it and make it better. Like that's a good thing to have. But it also is great that like anybody can make anything and the experience of being outdoors is so different for so many people. So I'm kind of not sure where I feel, like
I think the content and the quality of the content always wins, right? I mean, you think of
not always, but
I mean, there are examples where something rises above, but I think even like look where podcasts are ending up, right? There's a million podcasts, but the ones that aren't very good, maybe they get a few people listening to them, but they go down to the bottom. I mean, look at someone like Patty. Right, I mean, there's a guy who
just tanked, just gone, just off the face of the.
They canceled Safety Third.
Where did he even go? Yeah,
no, but I mean, like he's probably doing what I think is probably maybe the most interesting thing going on at Outside right now. His show is fantastic, and like good on them to see that talent and invest in him and give him that platform. And I think if it's to Brendan's point, if it's an interesting voice and they're creating interesting, something that's interesting. People are going to find it, and there's more opportunities now to get your stuff in front of people. Like that's the glass half full approach, probably to this world that we're living in, right? It's like, well, you relied on the Idaho magazine in your class to kind of kick your career off. Well, now, you would have way more opportunities to kind of get whatever you wrote for that magazine for other people to see it, in addition to that magazine if you started today. So I think it's the next few years, and from a positive point of view, could be really interesting, especially as people find more ways and more interesting ways to tell outdoor stories.
Yeah. No, I teach a writing workshop every year, and we spend a half a day on like getting published, and I'm like, every year the content is more like, why don't you just self-publish it? I mean, like,
really? Yeah.
Because I'm like, we have a friend come in who's I have a friend dropping in for that afternoon this year, and he was an editor at Trail Runner and Outside Run, and then in Orion before that. And I'm like, we'll just talk about your experience or whatever. But honestly, I'm like, I feel like these people should start Substacks. It's like, what's your goal? Like, what do you actually want? Do you want to be heard? Do you need the validation of having written for a big magazine? Okay, that's a thing. Do you want to get paid? Well, sure. Writing for publications is a way to get a check, but in the long run, is it actually better for you to just build your own channel and like charge people for your content? Might be at this point for most of us, So
I think it probably is.
Do you even care about money if you're in my writing workshop, or do you just want to, learn how to tell a few stories and like, so.
Well, that's the thing too, right? I mean, part of me getting the podcasting was fulfilling a 25-year-old dream of being a radio DJ. And then in the 1990s, there was like, a million of us that wanted to do it and like 10 jobs. So I was like, well, I guess I'm not doing that, right? I gave up. Probably shouldn't have, but I did. Yeah. And now it's like whether you make money doing this or not, you can now do this. So it's interesting.
Yeah. We talk a lot in our house because my wife's a writer and editor too, and like talk about like the point of all these things. And I'm like, we have different, friends who have started a Substack or whatever, and we're like, okay, I need to, make money off this after 3 months of it. And I was like, I think maybe the better place to start is like, what's fun for me to do? Mm-hmm. Because at first, this is probably not going to be a big income, if any. So if I have fun doing it, then I'm going to want to do it. And it's going to be better for everyone involved who's, readers don't really want you to be like, oh God, I got to write another fucking Substack this week. They want you to have fun because they'll have fun. And then if you keep doing that over and over, it becomes this fun thing. And then maybe people will pay you for it. But that's kind of, I'm lucky to be able to say I can just do shit like that and be like, I'll try this and see what happens. And if it makes money, cool. If not, that's cool too.
Well, for anyone out there listening, help Brendan make money and go buy his book. Go to semi-rad.com, buy Ultra something, just like Justin and I are going to do as soon as we hang up, because we're bad hosts who didn't read the book before our guest came on.
I can send you guys copies, but also you could just come to my house with a briefcase full of money too. That'd be easy.
Yeah.
All right, we'll start driving to Montana.
A briefcase full of Venmo QR codes.
Hey man, thanks for coming on. Really, really appreciate having you on. Let's not wait so long to do it again.
Okay, I'm not busy next week, so whenever you guys I'm just joking. No,
our new co-host, Brendan Leonard's here.
We don't even have daycare next week. I can't do it. No.
Oh my God, that's great.
Yeah, thanks for having me, though.
Thanks, buddy. All right, that's the show for today. Big thanks to Brendan Leonard for making some time to come and hang out with Justin and myself. The Rock Fight is a production of Rock Fight LLC. Our producer today is David Karstad. Art direction by Sarah Gensert. And for Justin Hausman, I'm Colin True. Thanks for listening. And here to take us out is the voice of Rock Fight, Mr. Krista Makes, with the Rock Fight fight song. We'll see you next time, Rock Fighters.
Rock fight.